What we'll be covering today, first of all, is the practice of the red tent. And it is the practice, okay? So a lot of women will just go to a one-off event, but the real power in anything is the cyclic repetition of it. And because we're cyclic beings, this is when the practice deepens and we really reap the benefits. So I'm going to speak about what's involved in this ancient custom, which is resurfacing on the globe and has already become a global phenomena because there is such a need for it. I'll explain the benefits that women gain and why the red tent is needed today and how it supports us as women of all ages. Okay, there's this idea that it's just, for menstruating women, and that is not the case. So, I'll speak about how it supports us to grow gracefully through all of our life stages, transitions and life challenges, and how the red tent ensures that we get our needs met. Okay. We'll also cover how this practice reduces stress and struggle in our daily lives just by aligning with the rhythm of the lunar cycle. How it supports us in stepping into our personal power as a queen. By a queen, I mean someone who's sacred and sovereign, someone who's self-governing, and how the red tent accelerates our growth and empowerment as women. How it promotes the power of sisterhood, healing our relationship with the feminine so we're not in competition or comparison with other women. And how, on a macrocosm scale, it's helping to restore the sacred balance through the restoration of ancient feminine customs and wisdom teachings. And at the end, my top 10 tips for creating a truly transformational red tent. So, the practice. Let's get to it. Basically, the red tent is this womb-like sanctuary where we gather as women. Often it's decorated in reds and pinks, so it's like sitting in an external womb. For those of you that have recently been to my Facebook page, The Moon Woman, you'll see that I posted a beautiful video of a Native American elder, a man, speaking about the cosmic womb and how women were revered for having the microcosm of that within their bodies, which gave them a very sacred aura, that ability to gestate life within us, and why women were revered as shamans who could then recreate that womb in ceremony to literally harness the creative powers of the elements and manifest with sacred intention. And that's what we do when we gather in this womb together. Our psychic powers are expanded when we gather, which is why, ancient Rome outlawed the practice. And because of that, those of us that have descended from a European background, a Celtic background, we had that legacy interrupted. And so women were then, disempowered one generation after another through not having access to their birthright of sacred women's customs and wisdom teachings. So the idea of gathering in this womb is that because we're cyclic monthly creatures, because we're ruled by the moon, the feminine is ruled by the lunar energy. It's receptive, it's reflective. We understand that we go through a psychological death and rebirth process every month. And if we consciously embrace that, then we're really in harmony with ourselves on all levels, mentally, emotionally, energetically, and physically. If we're completely disconnected from ourselves and from that cyclic way of being, this inner hysteria starts to build, which has been renamed stress, but in the 1800s it was called hysteria. I've done a YouTube video on that for those that want to follow that up afterwards. But hysteria is like the inner feminine that's been neglected, going, not coping. I need to express what's inside of me like a valve. I need to let the pressure out. I need to have a good cleansing cry, or I need to express my anger. And women understood this in all the Indigenous cultures. They would come together and hold each other with sisterly love, so that whatever has been weighing upon your heart, whatever you've been journeying with, whatever struggles you've been carrying in your medicine burden basket, they will just naturally come up and be released in a loving, held, safe space, so that the rest of the month you feel sane. You don't feel hysterical. You don't feel like you're brittle and walking on eggshells and you're just going to go at your kids if they trigger you. So it was understood this was a way of creating sort of cyclic sustainability emotionally, mentally, energetically. And when we allow ourselves this shamanic process of death and rebirth on a regular basis, our growth becomes graceful. So I could go on for hours, but I better get on to the next slide, me figures. So, like I said, many think it was just a menstrual hut, but the thing is, yes, it was where the women would go when they were losing their life force, i.e. their life-giving blood, on the understanding that this was a time to rest. This was a time to nourish yourself. Women would gather and share food and laugh and share healings on each other and foot rubs and braid each other's hair. It was a time of loving ourselves, of filling our cup, so that we had it to give the rest of the community the rest of the month. Without this, we see huge pandemics of breast cancer sounding the alarm as the wisdom of our bodies says, hey, I can't just give and give and give to the point of, burnout. So, women in the agricultural matriarchal communities in Neolithic times would line the menstrual hut, the red tent, with hay. And, they would just open their skirts, and those who were bleeding would bleed onto the hay, and then that hay would be put onto the crops. It was the original fertilizer, Now it's been replaced with blood and bone, but from animals, But this had no vibration of death. This was, the sacred blood from the cosmic womb within the Temple of Women. So it was like an anointing of the crops, and the intelligence of the plants meant that they would read the DNA and the codes of this alchemical sacred substance that was the blood, and they would develop the nutrients that the people needed. So, people lived in a state of communion, of sacred union with the mother, with the land, with their bodies. There was no separation. The blood was returned. So, we've become very, it's like I've got next to me in this Skype booth books on Harry Potter, and it, speaking the word menstruation has become hushed, like Voldemort, the evil figure from Harry Potter, because it's so taboo in a patriarchal culture. And the word taboo comes from the Polynesian word tapua, meaning sacred power. So there's the root of it. We have this sacred power within us that we have been conditioned to view as something shameful, something not to be spoken, something socially inappropriate to mention in public. But in fact, like the saying, where there's fear, there's power. So women do continue to cycle after menopause, after it was known in traditional cultures, it got changed to menopause. And that's when we retain that power within us. So menstruation is a practice where we practice going deep, we practice going into a meditative state when our psychic gifts are again expanded, when the womb cycles with the blood in that inner cauldron. It takes our consciousness deep within, when women were said to be closest to God because they're so deep within their psyche. So, this was a time when women would practice their feminine gifts, their clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, intuition, not just for themselves, for each other, and for the greater good. This is when women would bring through insights for the tribe, for the community, and women were revered for that, that service. So I'm just going to have a slug of my tea to keep my throat moist since I'm talking so much. Inside the red tent, women would share their experiences so they could identify the lesson rather than just go on and on about the drama, okay? When we talk about drama, we actually drain each other. I was speaking to a woman the other day and she just unloaded on me as if, like a monologue when someone's just talking at you. And she was in drama. She was just, obviously she had never been to a women's circle, and it was obvious, because when we don't get this regular practice of being held and being heard and seen and witnessed, it builds up. And when someone really does hold that space for us with compassion, it comes out like a river. And, so women understood that we heal together. Yeah. There's actually 3 stages to healing. The first, we really can only deal with one other person, seeing us in our shame, seeing us in our wound. And then once we've done some individual healing sessions, the next stage of healing is the power of group, of sharing your story, sharing your journey, being seen in your woundedness, transparently open and vulnerable. When we can see that in each other, we realize, oh my gosh, we're all the same, we're all fragile, we're all vulnerable, we're all doing this journey. Some months we're strong, other months we feel shattered, and in seeing that in each other, we open up this sisterly heart of empathy and compassion for one another, which then is mirrored back, and we feel it for ourselves. So, you can probably hear how passionate I am about this practice, because as a sole parent for many, many years, this is what got me through. And I feel that every woman deserves access to this. Yes, we have free will, try it, see if it's for you, but to not even know about it, to not have access to it is I think a recipe for mental illness for women, because we're so sensitive, we hold everyone emotionally, that we need extreme self-care during the time of the month when we're at our lowest ebb. So this is where we access our wisdom, we access our intuition, we practice it like a muscle, it grows. I've already said this is where we heal together, not just through sharing healing modalities, but we empower ourselves by speaking our truth. The throat chakra is the center of truth, and it's also the energy center of healing. So you'll know when you get that tennis ball throat, when you need to have a good cry, it feels like there's a rock in your throat. That's a block of energy as stuff's coming up, and it needs to be expressed. It needs to be spoken. And if we suppress that, it's ironic, this woman I was speaking to had just 6 months ago been treated for throat cancer because she hadn't been speaking her truth. So, this is the place where women would nurture each other. We all need mothering, it never stops. And those that are in the mothering phase of their life, whether they're physical mothers, with their own biological or adopted children or foster children, we're all nurturing, whether that's nurturing pets, nurturing elder parents, nurturing clients, nurturing partners, but just nurturing the growth of a project or a community. We all nurture, so we need to have like a field lies fallow in order to replenish. We need that on a regular basis. And this was a way of women getting pampering where it wasn't costing, you know, spa prices. You know, it was given with the touch of love in exchange. And I've already spoken about the fact it was to rest and replenish. It then got distorted in the sort of patriarchal era. So women were then viewed through this distorted lens and seen as contaminated when they bled, and that they should be kept apart and not attend temples. Here in Bali, they're still superstitious about that. And it was because of our psychic power. So, but I dare say a lot of women went, you don't want us around doing domestic chores? Sure, no problem. I'm not going to fight you on that. And happily went off to their sisterhood red tent. So, why is it red? Well, when we start cycling within our bodies with the moon, when we become fertile, it was recognised in Indigenous cultures, we stepped into our power to create. And so the red blood would be honoured. Women would wear red. The red tent would be decorated with red. The mother phase is red, representing life force. Like, you know, the red earth. So, yes, it was where women would traditionally gather when they were bleeding, but it was also where women were initiated into what was termed the blood mysteries. So being initiated with wisdom teachings through the transitions that our body puts us through, which is menarche, first blood, so your first period, also known as moon dew, then our sexuality, and it's not that we were sexual in the red tent, but that women would be prepared for marriage, for sacred union. You know, I mean, when the hymen is broken, that skin deep within our womb, you know, there's blood. So it is another blood rite. With pregnancy, that's another blood rite where our bodies initiate us deeper into self-understanding, and there is a descent, there is a letting go and a death process of the previous identity, and then finally moon pause. So for those who are interested, there is a rites of passage training that I'll be doing later in the year, and that will then be turned into a level 2 Women's Mysteries facilitator training online course. So this is where women were assisted through their transitions, so they weren't going through that alone and in isolation. So as I said, our bodies initiate us through those 4 life stages: maiden, mother, magus or enchantress, and elder. And we were revered for that cyclic process because it was understood that we would practice our feminine power, our wisdom, our psychic gifts. So becoming an elder woman was seen with deep, deep reverence, not as someone who was obsolete or invisible or a joke. The women who taught and initiated women into the sacred blood mysteries wore red, so they were referred to as the ladies in red. So you could see them, you know, easily identifiable in a market square or something, and they were revered. They had the cyclic wisdom of the womb that they initiated women into, and they were the high priestesses. The title of the high priestess was the Magdalene. So Mary, the Magdalene, who was the partner of Yeshua, Yeshua being Jesus, it was the Greeks that changed his name to Jesus. She was just one Magdalene, but it also indicates that he honoured the feminine mysteries deeply and honoured her as his equal, as the high priestess queen, as he was a sacred king, a high priest king. The cultures which didn't honour the cycles and the sacred blood from the womb then went on to become the most bloodthirsty. You know, men unconsciously sought out war as an initiation blood rite. If men aren't initiated as Grail Knights, they unconsciously destroy that which is sacred, that which has been created. So those that are interested in knowing more about that, there's an MP4 video presentation which you can also purchase as a DVD on my website called Sacred Union and the Holy Grail. So I'll just have another sip of my tea. When girls aren't taught to honour their cycles on all levels, mentally, energetically, emotionally and physically, they feel disempowered as women. You know, as girls we get, you know, maybe the perfunctory med or tampon or pad, maybe a hot water bottle, but we don't get the mystic initiation, and without that we're at risk of depression, anxiety. We see, you know, girls in this maiden phase, the rates of self-harm, of eating disorders and suicide are through the roof at the moment, because they're not getting this deep understanding of who they are, which helps them to caretake their needs on all levels on a cyclic basis. It also leads them to seek out power according to what they see valued in society, often at their own expense. So here we have an image of, you know, the pop diva Miley Cyrus as a role model posing in her underwear doing the selfie. You know, this is girls literally selling themselves cheap, selling themselves short, because the patriarchy says their main value is their sexual attractiveness. So, you know, this puts them at risk of online predators. I know my daughter's been approached when she was 13. So, you know, it's the red tent initiating girls into really understanding that they are sacred, their bodies are temples, and how to be discerning and set boundaries with potential partners, so that they're not placing themselves in at-risk situations. It's not about morality. It's not about, you know, suppressing our sexuality, but it is about really honouring our sacred sexual power and not giving it away, or allowing our bodies to be treated like amusement parks. So, the benefits women gain from the red tent: support to grow gracefully. How the red tent ensures our needs are met. Well, support for young women. This sort of extrapolates on where I was just going. This is where they learn how to be their own women through access to many role models. I'll explain what I mean. When we are going through puberty, it is a natural process that we individuate from our mums or from our primary female carers. What that means is that we start doing the opposite to them. So if mum says black, we say white, or we might start judging mum, putting her down. Oh, you're not wearing that out in public, are you? And all of this we can then feel deep guilt about as young teenage girls or tween girls. But this is where the red tent helps girls and mums through this transition, because it understands this is a time when they will naturally need to pull away from their mums to assert their own feminine identity. And so having access to many women who are older that they can then go to for advice. And, you know, it's built on the understanding it does take a village, like the African proverb, to raise a child, but especially a teenager, because, you know, they can go to one woman and feel comfortable speaking about sexuality. Another woman in the circle, they'll feel they can seek out for business advice, or another woman it might be to just get a hug, you know. So, and that's not that they completely cut from their mums, it just takes the pressure off, and gives both the mum and the daughter support during that time. So, and we also get to mother each other's daughters, which is a beautiful thing. So it was a safe space to debrief from mistakes. In our teens and our 20s, that's when we make our biggest mistakes, and it's inevitable. So this was a place where, instead of carrying that alone and feeling deep shame, we could share it and hear some of the big mistakes that our elders had made, and all have a laugh about it and a cry about it and let it go and focus on what we learned and be empowered by that. This is a place where our strengths and potential are affirmed, so that we really grow that self-belief and understand that we have the support to build our visions in the world for a better world. It's where we receive guidance both intuitively and from our elders. So the support it gives women in the mothering phase, so this is in their 30s up to sort of mid-40s, and look, these are just guidelines. I understand, I have a friend that gave birth to her first child at 46, so, nothing is fixed, but it's a guide. It gives those who are mothering this experience to know that they're not alone in experiencing the dark mother phase. So dark mother is when we don't have it to give, and we often feel that when we're bleeding or around the darkest moon phase, and this is when we're more likely to snap at our kids or to withdraw. And so this practice was to support mothers, support women through that. It also gives us access to support for the parenting challenges that we have, and just by laughing about them, by, we're debriefing, and to see our daughters being supported by the community is a huge healing gift in itself. And to have regular time and space just to relax, recharge, reflect. I know running retreats, I get women who may never have given themselves that, or the women that come to Red Tent for the first time and never want to leave, because they don't have that on a regular basis, and it is a need, not a want. The support the Red Tent practice gives older women is it's where elders are truly honoured, revered, valued for their experiential wisdom. So they get an experience of their place in the community. It's where elders can contribute directly and see their legacy, see how grateful and receptive the younger women are. So they have that deep sense of meaning and purpose in their life. It's where we develop our mystic abilities instead of fearing them. So those are our feminine gifts that I spoke about. And it's where we connect to the cyclic wheel, the nature of life. We all loved The Lion King. It reverberated in our hearts, this being connected to the circle of life. When we live that, we aren't afraid of aging, we aren't afraid of death. We understand the cycles within the cycles within the cycles. Yeah, we are eternal, but within that, the more we align with the cycles, the more graceful, the more wise we become. It also affords greater support for working women, those that are stuck in corporate or in masculine fields. This helps rebalance them by giving their feminine side deep nourishment on a soul level. It also offers connection with other women in a space that is free of status, free of competition. It provides a safe space to share without being judged or compared, and it relieves stress. It gives one perspective. If we're reviewing on a regular basis, we can make adjustments and adapt so that we're not making cyclic mistakes like Groundhog Day, which then become very costly personally, professionally. It provides support for those who are in couples, partnerships, and families, because by getting some time apart for ourselves to fill our cup, to review our actions, our behaviours, this means that when we do return to our partners and our families, we're not carrying the tension. We've let it go, so we can be more available emotionally to them, more loving, more able to give, and that cyclic support reduces the chance of tension and conflict. It means that we're more likely to be open to intimacy at full moon, which is the opposite to dark moon. Dark moon is when we need to withdraw and give to ourselves amongst women, because women just intuit what we need. It flows. We don't have to, caretake each other and not be held, not be given to in return. And it takes pressure off partners to have to meet all of our needs, It's understood that there are some needs that are met by our partners, but there are many needs that are actually met by our sisters. It also provides support for friendships because we get regular contact time, quality time. There's authentic, heart-centered sharing rather than just surface level conversations. Often if you're only getting a quick chat at pick up and drop off at school, or maybe a quick cup of coffee, you don't get to go deep. You don't get to feel. You don't get to express the deep vulnerabilities with each other. It also means that you're getting the support when you need it. Often when women are, distraught, they don't want to burden each other. So the last thing you're going to do is say, hey, do you want to go out for coffee and cake? It gives women support at the time when we're most likely to feel our darker feelings, our darker emotions, and we're already there when they come up. So we don't have to seek out support when we feel like crap. And it's a great way to meet like-minded women. If you've just moved to a new city, Google Red Tent and your location in order to connect in. Just coming here to Bali for 2 months. Initially, I was invited to, a Women's Day, and immediately that connected me in with the local sisterhood. So today I'm going to do ceremony with women at a temple. It immediately connects you in with sisterhood. So when something is woven, it is strong. Here we see a beautiful Native American basket. Indigenous women understood this. They knew that their true strength was in connectivity. So the more we connect, the more we interweave our lives by really sharing ourselves, the more we have this strength that we can call upon as a foundation when we don't feel strong, okay? The women in my Red Tent circle back home that I've sat with every dark moon for the last 3 years, when I was too sick to pack, but I had to get on a plane to go speak at the London Mind Body Spirit, I just put in our private Facebook group, help. And I had someone come and cook and pack and, so it's not just about getting the support during the dark moon at the Red Tent. It's knowing that the women that see you at your worst and at your best, they're there for you, no matter what. So the feminine essence is free-flowing energy. It's Shakti. Well, that's how the energy is known as in the Hindu tradition, Shakti being the goddess principle. So for that energy to flourish, it needs to feel held. It needs a container. And that's why in the tantric tradition you'll see the bowl and the phallus representing, the womb, and the lingam, the sacred phallus of the masculine with the sacred womb of the feminine. but it's understood that that energy, that life force, it needs a container in order to create. You know, people go, God, I look at how many things are on your website and I'm just amazed. It's like, yeah, I've got a lot of Shakti. I generate a lot of creative energy due to the Kundalini raising activities that I do, but also because I'm held, okay? So the more we honor our womb, the more we have a womb practice, the more creative we become, the more powerful we become as women. And as I said, without this, we feel hysterical. Our nervous system feels frayed. We are more easily overwhelmed, anxious, and like this rope, there'll come a point where we just snap. So this is an incredible painting that a dear sister of mine, Wendy, who I sit with at Dark Moon, painted with her menstrual blood. That is what your womb looks like. Okay? And it looks like the cow goddess Hathor. So this is why cows are sacred in India. Our wombs, they carry everything that we don't express emotionally. And that will then result in physical illness if we're not expressing that emotion on a regular basis. So this is why women end up having hysterectomies, aptly named, because they can't take any more hysteria, any more stress. The inner feminine has just gone, that's it, enough, because it results in physical pain. So when we gather in circle once a month and we feel deeply held, we feel deeply supported, that foundation then means that we can create from a place of strength in every area of our lives. This enhances our health, our well-being on every level. You know, physically, women experience less physical illness and less fight, flight, or freeze reactions, because this practice helps to strengthen the lower chakras, the base chakra, which is our connection to the earth, and our womb, our emotional center, our sacral. So emotionally, when we feel safe, we're less likely to comfort eat, compulsively smoke to try and, suppress our emotions. I know when I gave up smoking, I used to binge on biscuits, particularly shortbread, and then I found out butter also suppresses emotion. So, women are reaching for crutches, trying to find some emotional balance. Others will be maxing out their credit cards, going shopping, or reaching for a drink. But this practice helps to balance our emotions so that all these secondary social behaviours just naturally decrease. Mentally, when we're doing this practice, we feel more centered, clearer, so we feel lighter and more mentally resilient because we're identifying our patterns, our lessons, and we're also setting clear intention for the coming month. And psychically, we feel calmer, clearer, and wise because we're attuning to our intuition. So this is why we get stronger every time we gather at New Moon. Energetically, we feel energized when we're able to release what we've been carrying, what burdens, and really let it go through the power of sacred ceremony. And it also addresses our primal need to belong. I love that I found this picture of little girls' hands, because we've all got a little girl in us, regardless of our chronological age. And she needs to feel held. She needs to have a sense that she belongs to something greater. This is why people in majority world countries, previously known as third world countries, are happier, because community is so strong, so they have this primal need to belong met. And this is why in what's called the first world countries, where community isn't as strong, it's not interwoven through social structures like red tents, that we don't feel we belong. You know, we live alone, we are more in separation, and so, you know, again, we reach out for all these addictions to comfort ourselves when what we're aching for is a need to belong to something. So how sisterhood grows in the red tent and helps us to heal our relationship with the feminine. I'm just going to have a sip. This is a beautiful image from the mini-series The Red Tent, based on the book by Anita Diamond. It's a great read. I thoroughly recommend it, and I managed to find this on YouTube. So, because I couldn't access it in Australia, I didn't have a TV, which, you know, certainly not a help. But yeah, so you might want to check that out on YouTube. When women sit in circle, we see ourselves reflected in each other. I spoke about this before. So it develops compassion for ourselves and for each other. Now, let me just touch on something. I know I was bullied when I went through puberty by other girls, and they were really cruel. And the way that women bully is they exclude you. So I wasn't allowed to sit with them and eat lunch. And, you know, it was through that experience for a year that through an omission of something, you realise its value. Okay, so that was preparing me for this work, initiating women into circle. So for those of you that are afraid of sitting with women because you've had an experience of being excluded, of women bitching about you, gossiping about you, you know, giving you the death stare, you know, freezing you out, you will be maybe not surprised to learn that I would say 99% of women have experienced that shadow feminine. And the reason is girls are not being initiated into an experience of authentic sisterhood. When that is anchored, we don't flip into those shadow feminine behaviours. So this is another reason why we're reinstating this as a legacy to initiate future generations of girls. This experience reduces our inner critic, who expects us to be perfect in all of our roles. And women who don't have this experience of authentic sisterhood, they compete with one another. They try to be more perfect, and they'll use other women as a yardstick. So whether it's just judging them in their thoughts, or whether it's speaking about them behind their back, but they bolster their low self-esteem by putting others down. So I've grabbed this image from the remake of the Stepford Wives sci-fi film. The remake was appalling, but the original was well worth seeking out. But this is absolutely prevalent in our culture. You know, women being made up like dolls and putting on a social mask of being sweet and nice and being absolutely catty and cruel and vindictive beneath that, which is why trust is broken, and why we need to heal the global sisterhood so that together we are strong, we are an unstoppable force for positive social change, which is what's needed on the planet. As I said, red tents is how we create a culture where no one is excluded by mean girls, and where we heal the wounding inflicted by women towards women. So why the red tent is needed today? I think I've probably just summed that up. But people are stressed about the state of the world. You know, it's what's frontal lobe. I know over my Christmas period, that's what people were talking about. And it's because everything's so out of balance that we're witnessing mass destruction on every level and complete chaos, because we're emerging from 5,000 years of this empiric consciousness, which is divide and conquer or rule and be ruled. So as I said, the Roman Empire demanded duty to the state over love. So the feminine wisdom practices and teachings were outlawed. You were literally killed. For 500 years in Europe, women were burned at the stake. They were drowned if they initiated women, if they taught women their birthright. You know, this was a genocide. There are no museums dedicated to that Holocaust. So the legacy is it created a culture where we were taught to fear women's wisdom and supernatural abilities. You know, it infiltrated, and our folk tales, which were used to teach, were distorted. Male storytellers twisted those stories and turned wise women who bore the fruit of wisdom that was sacred to the goddess into something which would poison a maiden. And we can see here they're caricatured with warts and ugliness. So this era was not honouring of feminine qualities, of vulnerability, of sensitivity in both men and women. Okay, so this is not, you know, about women coming together and bitching about men. And that's because a culture which is created by an empire, an empiric consciousness, denies the soul needs, which is the feminine, the inner self. So ever since Rome, we have not lived happily ever after. You know, suicide, in Australia at least, I was appalled to find is the #1 cause of death for women aged 15 to 45 right now. After that, it's cancer, which is often unexpressed trauma, manifesting as cancerous cells in the body. So we've lived separately rather than communally. So we tend to work harder rather than smarter. We've been governed by linear time, which is a man-made construct, and we stopped living in alignment with the natural cycles. Most of us have lived in man-made cities, surrounded by propaganda, constantly imposing on us, telling us what to think, what to do, what to say, what to buy, how to look, rather than being connected and surrounded to the beauty of the natural world, which soothes our nervous system with its sounds, with its beauty, with its scent. We learn to work long hours to earn an artificial measurement of our worth, rather than naturally sharing our resources, which is the way of the feminine, the way of all the indigenous cultures that honoured the feminine. So it's time to restore the sacred balance with feminine wisdom, with practices, customs. And to restore that balance, we need to learn how to honour our feminine side. And we do that by cultivating the feminine in our daily lives through practices of sharing and community, aligning with and honouring the natural cycles, by action that's motivated by our heart, by empathy, by compassion, by soulful expressions such as art, through sacred practices, conscious intent, and being and reflection to develop our wisdom. So not just go, 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 do, productivity, but stopping, contemplating. Without this, the feminine will continue to be oppressed, both internally, as we see it as not as important, as lesser, as not a priority, and also externally, which in our world has been creating a downward spiral of entropy, not of growth, of destruction. And if the feminine continues to be oppressed, we're going to see more of these images being exposed to our kids on Saturday morning video clip shows. Here we see pop divas like Katy Perry and Rihanna that are, owned by the powers that be, that say you will put these images into your next video clip, or we will create a publicity nightmare for you and cut off your fame and your fortune. And so we see these degrading images being fed into the minds of the young. And young women are therefore increasingly at risk in a predatory culture that views the feminine primarily as sexual prey to be sold as a marketable commodity. You know, the highest users of pornography are boys aged 12 to 15, so they're being initiated into human sexuality through these distorted images that oppress and dominate the feminine. This puts girls at risk of being brutally harmed. 68% of young men now view porn a minimum of once a week, and 88% of that porn contains acts of physical aggression. And instead of seeking feminine wisdom, young women are seeking out mindless ego distractions like celebrity gossip, sport, political intrigues, reality shows where women are displaying the shadow feminine traits like gossip and, vanity, and carving themselves up in order to try and be the perfect woman with cosmetic surgery. We also see short-term money and power being sought over long-term sustainability and soul fulfillment because the feminine is being denied. The feminine is what helps us to provide social sustainability through social structures like Circle. So how do we change both our personal and our global vortex from a downward whirlpool of entropy to one of evolution and creative social change which uplifts and empowers us as a whole? We do it with Circle by gathering at the new moon, which is the time to seed intention. Very, very powerful to create these positive vortices all over the planet, with women using their psychic power to visualize a better world, to send healing where it's needed on the planet. Yeah, this is how we take back our power. That is our true power, to rebirth, to reweave a new reality on this planet. And when we do it in alignment with the natural cycles, that's amplified. So we can choose to live in a conscious cycle of growth, like this beautiful Fibonacci shell, Nautilus shell, I should say, which shows the Fibonacci spiral, the golden mean, that perfect divine design that is within our bodies, spiraling as our DNA. Or we can just be passive, do nothing, and the unconscious cycle of destruction will continue. If we want a divine life, we need to emulate that divine design of nature by aligning with the natural cycles in our lives. You know, nature regenerates and grows in circles, like this beautiful mushroom ring. So we also grow, we accelerate our understanding, we feel more joy when we connect regularly in circle. Stars in the macrocosm form by spiraling together, magnetizing more light particles so that everybody's light grows. This is the magic that happens in circle. And our stellar friends, those that are patiently sending love and healing from, the star systems around us, they're leaving these beautiful mandalas for us, this sacred art to open our codes of remembrance and to remind us that we need to embrace the ancient way of cycling together. So life spirals upwards. We just need to reconnect with the natural cycles if we want to thrive and evolve, to heal and empower our feminine side, and to balance our emotions, strengthen our intuition. We need to live in alignment with the lunar cycle. So the practice of Red Tent aligns us with the lunar cycle. We gather during the lowest ebb, which is when we feel tired and emotional. It's known as dark moon, new moon. And that's when we rest and reflect together. Just wait for that motorbike. if we're not doing that, if we're completely cut off from the natural cycles, if we're plugged into just linear time, we end up burning out, going into martyr, and then imploding as if a psychic bomb has gone off, and being in dark mother, regardless of whether we're a mother or not. So this is why women in traditional cultures gathered in circle to support women during their inward time. So how does the red tent help us step into our personal power as a queen? There we see a beautiful priestess woman holding that apple. And the apple was sacred because if you sliced it open horizontally, you see the 5-pointed star, which is the shape that Venus makes as she moves through the cosmos, and it was the symbol of sacred feminine wisdom. That's why if you ate an apple a day, you were said to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. So when we're alone, we can feel overwhelmed by how large our problems seem. But when we gather, we access our intuition, which is our greatest strength as women. And we practice our power every time we acknowledge our fears and wounds, and we transcend them through right action. Here you see a pomegranate with a little crown on the top. Those who descended to taste of the dark fruit, those bitter, sour seeds, would become queens, would become sacred and sovereign because they were so full of wisdom. In ancient matriarchal times, the underworld, which was then renamed by the patriarchy as hell, was simply the womb of the Great Mother. It's where we'd go deep, deep into the void, the nothingness, the darkness within, into that Zen place to rebirth ourselves, to then emerge with new understanding. People understood this in the ancient world, so they would not fear going to hell. They would willingly descend during the dark phases of nature to grow their wisdom. If we don't understand the cyclic descent, we fear it. We'll medicate our darker moods in order to avoid them. So the red tent teaches us how to embrace our shadow, our darker side, with compassion and trust in the cyclic process. Knowing that we shall return, we shall shed our skin like a serpent, like our uterine lining every month, and we will be renewed, wiser for the experience of having had the descent. Each woman who joins or seeds a red tent circle is literally changing the trajectory on our planet by bringing light to the collective shadow. So the shadow is not ruling. We are not living in this shadowlands, this dark empire in empiric consciousness, with people operating out of their unconscious, wounding one another. Nostradamus said at this time in human evolution, the feminine would rise and transform society as we know it. That is the feminine in both men and women. And how do we grow the feminine? In circle. The Dalai Lama was quoted at a summit saying the world will be saved by the Western woman. I believe it is the feminine in all cultures, but I feel he was making the point of the Western woman in that the West is where things are most out of balance, most patriarchal, and that's where the feminine is most needed. So those of us who have incarnated into these first world Western capitalist cultures where there's a lot of work to be done, we have privilege, and with that privilege comes great responsibility. So this is a call to action, to not just enjoy the perks, but to look at what can I do? How can I serve? How can I awaken that inner heroine? So it's time to take action. Wonder Woman! That's me in my superhero costume as Lilith. It's like a snakeskin lycra. In my Red Tent course, I speak about Lilith, who is the goddess archetype that governs the base chakra, and she initiates us into the blood mysteries, into our serpent power, which is why when the patriarchs took the teachings of Yeshua and distorted them and brought out their version 300 years after his death, they turned the serpent into an evil character, so people wouldn't listen to feminine wisdom. So when our values are clear, decisions are then easy, choices are easy when we're clear on our values. So if you value connection and heart-centered wisdom, sisterhood, inclusivity, authenticity, transparency, accountability, right action, conscious relating, community, mutual support for healing and growth, and ancient feminine wisdom and sacred customs, this is your invitation to be part of a revolution that is seeded in love, that is grown in love, that is nurtured in love, and fulfill the whirling rainbow prophecy. This is an ancient prophecy from many, many traditions. It was received simultaneously, and it said that when the earth was dying and when many were facing extinction, a new tribe would be born, and all colours and creeds would come together, would spiral together, all colours, and live in harmony and turn the earth back to green. And that is what this practice is serving, this prophecy and its fulfillment. Circle helps us to awaken the understanding that we all have shadow. That there's no point in pointing out the shadow in someone in order to feel pure and without shadow yourself. That's fascism. And so this is the key to us coexisting, to owning our shadow, which is what the feminine traditions help us with. So it's what we need right now. Are great leaders, community leaders. That's the fastest way to change the world. People that will create a vortex of community around them to create change. And as the Hopi quote says, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So what is a leader? Simply someone who cares enough to initiate action, someone who leads from the heart, who is compelled by what their conscience is directing them to do. Their action then inspires others, which creates ripples of positive social change. We are all here to be leaders. You may not serve on a global level. You may be a leader in your school, in your workplace. But this is about creating positive change from the heart, and that as a people is our highest destiny. It's the key to living a fulfilling and meaningful life. And leaders come in all shapes, all sizes, all ages, backgrounds, social classes, with various disabilities, issues and obstacles to overcome. So I ask you, do you care enough to take action? If you want to create global change, invest in women. This is what all the charitable organisations of the world have realised through collating their statistics. Women are the ones that will seed and grow the change. So we're the best investment. This includes microloan agencies. They found that women are the ones that will pay it back. So they're the best bankable option to get a return on their investment. And red tents are the most simple and efficient and powerful way to generate the power of women working collaboratively together to make changes in their local communities. In the Native American tradition, if you wanted to destroy a village, you simply went and destroyed the Moon Lodge, which was their name for the red tent because they understood that was the very heart of the village. If you went and destroyed what was most sacred, you literally tore the womb out and people would be gutted, devastated. So it stands to reason that the fastest way to restore our global village is to seed red tents. So where do you see a possibility for a red tent? In your local community, maybe in a secondary school or in an aged care facility, in a women's domestic violence refuge, in a detention centre, or on a university campus where girls are at risk of campus rape. Maybe in a developing nation, or with immigrant women, with sole parent single mums, with sex workers who might feel too much shame to go and speak their truth in a regular public red tent circle, with disability carers who can speak about the shadow of always giving and not be judged, for transgender women who have a different path because they don't have a womb, they are not being initiated through the blood mysteries. This is why the Native Americans honoured them as two souls, as not feminine, not masculine, okay, but as their own non-binary, wholly hermaphrodite gender. So, you know, this is a call out to transgender women to create circles to support other transgender women. So with your daughters, with your granddaughters, your nieces, your friends, your mums, your aunties, your neighbours. You know, when my daughter started cycling, I took her to a red tent and I quickly realised, she would actually do best in a circle of mums and daughters. So I created one. You know, this is about responding to our needs that we see rather than, you know, trying to apply something external and imposing it if it doesn't fit. So we're almost there. Here's my top 10 tips for creating a transformational red tent. Number 10, create sacred space. You know, the saying, build it and they will come, from the film Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner. When we create a beautiful sacred space, people are automatically transported into a different realm, out of their mundane everyday world. So in the course that I teach, that's one of the things that I teach. Keep it intimate. You know, this is not a party, okay? So I really encourage women to go with their intuition. If you're creating a private red tent circle, the women that you know in your heart of hearts are meant to be there, that are capable of going deep at this point in their lives. The ones that resonate intuitively with your heart to be your inner circle, your safe sanctuary of women. And this way everyone gets longer sharing as well. Follow your intuition. Well, yeah, I just touched on that. For every part of creating your red tent, you know, I would always create a structure, and I have a structure for women to follow in the red tent facilitator course, but I also emphasize how important it is that we understand we're vessels. So we always invoke spirit to work through us, and for the mother, the great mother, to work through us, so that moment to moment we are attuning to the energy of the space, the energy of the group, and we follow our intuition as to where it needs to go, whether we're leading a meditation, whether we're facilitating. It's like, oh, I'm feeling to share this story, you know. So that's key. Then that's when magic happens, okay? Synchronicity. State the guidelines. This is so important. Even if it's a private circle where it's the same women gathering every new moon, this is giving consent. This is a reminder to the safety of that circle is held by the spoken guidelines that we all agree to. So the guidelines are what I provide in the training. Upholding the guidelines. Okay, so a leader needs to be prepared to not always be liked. In other words, to speak up if somebody unwittingly steps over the boundary and doesn't honour the guidelines. So that doesn't mean shaming them, making them wrong, judging them. It just means interjecting, but gently saying, if, you know, we can have no unsolicited advice spoken across the circle, or, you know, letting someone know that's not appropriate. This person, it's their turn to speak, you know. But we need to be prepared to act, to interject, because it's one thing to set a safe space. It's another thing entirely to maintain it, okay? To maintain a boundary is the greater challenge. And again, I go into detail as to how to do that in my training. Use facilitation techniques to create a positive vortex. Well-meaning women who create circle and think, okay, we just take it in turns to speak and that's all we need to know, let's start, don't understand that that can then create a dynamic where everyone walks away feeling drained and goes, I'm never going back to that again. Couldn't wait for it to end. Because if everyone's going into their story, going into their drama, and the facilitator is allowing that to happen, then you will create a negative vortex. So in my training, I speak about the technique to create a positive vortex. So everyone walks away going, wow, I feel uplifted, I feel inspired, I grew so much, I learned so much. Ensure you have support, okay? When that cultural conditioning is so entrenched that says you're a good woman if you give to everybody but deny your own needs, it's absolutely imperative we don't repeat that in trying to provide this amazing space for other women, but at our own cost. So in my training, I speak about how important it is to have a support person and somebody who really does know the meaning of support, okay? Isn't just socializing and leaving you to do everything. So I go through the role and the duties of a support person. Okay, hold your circle during the dark moon phase. You know, I'm just going to take another slurp of tea. I really encourage the women in my training courses to honour the alignment with the dark moon, which means not just having it on every fourth Tuesday because that's when, you know, the hall is available, but really honouring this as a feminine custom, and it's about working with the energies, with the lunar phase. So you'll find way more power in your circle when you do that you're coming from the soul dictating rather than the rational mind trying to fit in with linear calendars. There's a lot more reasons that I go into, but yeah. Number 2, prepare yourself energetically to hold space. You know, you'll come away just feeling so drained if you don't do just a bit of energetic preparation, which includes invoking so that you're held in that space, and set clear energetic boundaries and intention. You know, energy flows where attention goes. We need to set very clear intention and very strong energetic boundaries when we're holding space. So again, that's something I cover in more detail in my training. So I'd love to share what I do in my training, but first I'd like to say why I created it. I had been training women since, I think it was 2006. I started training red tent facilitators after running red tents from 1996. And what happened, In 2010, I received guidance, literally from the womb of the Great Mother, the center of the earth, and it was, we need to seed as many circles as quickly as possible worldwide. And I was shown spirals all over the planet, spirals upward. And then I realized what I was being shown was women gathering at New Moon and creating these positive vortices to raise the collective consciousness. So what happened in 2013, oh, actually it was October 2012, a dear sister, Wendy Rule, some of you might know her, she's an incredible songstress who I recommend in the resources of my Red Tent course. She suggested that I create an online training. And so that launched in February 2013. It was the first Red Tent facilitator course online. And since then, it's trained women in 43 countries. So, you know, that vision was made possible thanks to technology. You know, I was able to reach women and do it at a fraction of the cost of, facilitator training, which in person costs a lot more because there's a lot more overheads. So this is why I would ask that you consider creating a red tent, whether it's a public one or a private one, doesn't matter. It will still create that positive vortex because it builds community, it gives support, helps keep everybody accountable and responsible to themselves, to their conscience. It connects all generations, which is deeply healing. It meets our primal need to belong, helps us practice authenticity and transparency, heals those old wounds of competition and comparison. It fills our cup with sisterly love, so our inner child feels held, which reduces dependency, codependency in relationship, and it creates an ongoing legacy of mentoring and guidance.
You also get the lifetime membership Sisterhood Forum valued at $4.99, the bonus materials. There's a beautiful wisdom series that I've created where I videoed 6 of my sisters who have a wealth of knowledge between them, everything from yoni steaming to, holding space, and even menstrual art. But there's also some bonus videos that I've created in answer to frequently asked questions in your bonus materials. And as well as that, the ongoing online promotion on my website, which is valued at $9.99. So the total value that you'll receive is $2,891 US, but I'm only charging $8.95, and that is tax deductible. So this is if you're already in the holistic industry, whether or not you're running women's circles is irrelevant. If you are running belly dance classes or yoga, or you're a naturopath, then you can still claim this as professional development. And even if you're not, you can claim this as reskilling if you intend to use this course to run public paid events. I'm also offering you a special discount as a thank you for purchasing this video tutorial. So you have this promo code on the screen. Write that down, okay? It's just the word GRAIL. Remember to put that in at the checkout and you will immediately get $100 discounted off the price, bringing it down to just $7.95. And if you pay up front for the course so that it's just one easy payment, you actually save another $100 US. So you can save $200 just by using the promo code and paying up front. And that means that you will get access to the entire course up front. So if you're really keen and you just want to, get right into it, then you've got everything you need. Alternatively, you can pay by installment and still save $100 using that GRAIL promo code. So do make sure you write that down. Just be mindful that it's a user pays system. So if you opt for the 3-month plan, you will get 2 modules every month. if you opt for the 6-month plan, you'll get one module every month. So it might suit you to stagger out not just the cost but the work. And keep in mind there is the price in red. Using that promo code, you will save $100 off the price still with that installment payment plan. So yeah, look, it'd be my absolute honour to have you in the course. You can start today. You can start whenever you like. So yeah, if you have any questions or any feedback as you're going, put it onto the course forum. If you've got specific questions for me that aren't being, addressed in the discussion board or on the forum, by all means drop me a line. All right, it's been my honour sharing this with you today, and I hope that you're inspired to start and seed your own red tent, because it's such a precious practice, and once you have it in your life, you can't imagine not having it. So blessings on your day and blessings on your journey into the red tent.